In part 2, we talk about disclosure in relationships. So relationship life cycle. Any relationship has different, you've got a beginning, you have a middle, you might have an end of a relationship. And in the middle of a relationship, you might go back and forth among the different relationship phases. Disclosure is the process of revealing confidential information. It might be self-disclosure, where you're revealing something about yourself, or it might be another type of disclosure. And feedback are the verbal and nonverbal responses we make to messages that we receive. So I've got a short video here about disclosure.
You're gonna go fight a dragon and rescue a princess just so Farquhar to get you back to Swamp, which you only don't have because he filled it full of freaks in the first place. Is that about right?
You know what? Maybe there's a good reason Donkey shouldn't talk.
I don't get it, Shrek. Why don't you just pull some of that ogre stuff on him? Problem. Lay seeds to his huntress. Grind his bones to make your bread. You know the whole ogre trip.
Oh, I know what. Maybe I could have decapitated an entire village and put their heads on a plate, got a knife, cut open their spleen and drank their fluids. Does that sound good to you?
No, not really, no.
For your information, there's a lot more to ogres than people think.
Example?
Example? Okay, ogres are like onions.
They stink?
Yes.
No. Oh, they make you cry?
No.
Oh, you leave them out in the sun, they get all brown, start sprouting little white hairs.
No. Layers. Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers. You get it. We both have layers.
Oh, you both have layers. Oh. Not everybody likes onions. Cake! Everybody loves cakes. Cakes have layers.
I don't care what everyone likes. Ogres are not like cakes.
You know what else everybody likes? Parfaits. Have you ever met a person, you say, hey, let's get some parfaits. They say, hell no, I don't like no parfaits. Parfaits are delicious.
No! You dense, irritating miniature beast of burden! Ogres are like onions. End of story. Bye-bye. See you later.
Okay, the social penetration theory starts with the idea that people, like Shrek, are like onions, and that they reveal different layers gradually in a relationship. Now, a person's personality has public layers that are accessible to everybody, semi-private layers that might be accessible only to a few, and then private layers that might be rarely accessible to anyone. Social penetration theory maintains that relationships develop gradually over time as a function of the degree of self-disclosure that occurs between the two people in that relationship. So, for example, imagine that you're at a party and you see various levels of interpersonal communication. You might have a few acquaintances that are just beginning to get to know each other, and they might share biographical information. Where they live, their names, where they live, where they went to high school. They might share, what they like in food or in music. And then there's a couple that maybe they're on their second or their third date, and they're chatting about their political views. And maybe there's a couple over here where a married couple, and maybe they're having a conversation about religious views and how children should be raised. And then maybe there's even yet another couple, and they are angry at the world. They sit away from the guests, and they're not talking to anybody, and they're not talking to each other. So the social penetration theory explains those differences in communication and relationship to the depth of how they're disclosing information. So you have the depth of the relationship, and then you have breadth. Breadth refers to the various facets of a person's life, such as work and family, so all the different things that you have, that's the breadth. But depth gets to the details and how much, private information, really getting into the, that heart of the onion. Those are the details in each one of those broad areas. Okay, let's talk about the JOHARI window. This model really looks at two interpersonal communication dimensions, the willingness to self-disclose, and the receptivity to feedback. Now, the willingness to self-disclose describes the extent to which you're ready and willing to disclose personal information and your feelings to other people. Receptivity to feedback relates to your awareness, interpretation, and response to someone else's self-disclosure about you. And when those two dimensions are graphed against each other, then you have this four-paned window that we refer to as the JOHARI window. I think this is figure 7.1 in the textbook. So the open pane represents information that you know and your partner knows. So it's known to you, known to self, and known to others. It might include a lot of kind of run-of-the-mill, mundane information that you share with most people, such as what your major is in school and maybe where you work. It might include some observations that your partner has made about you, such as how you draw cartoons if you're bored. Maybe it's more serious information, like how you behave when you get angry. Now, the secret pane contains everything you know about yourself, but your partner doesn't know it yet. And as you share information, as you share the secret information through this process of self-disclosure, that information moves into the open pane. Now, you may not want to share that with casual acquaintances, but once it's out there, it might be known to everybody. Now, the blind pane contains information your partner knows about you, but maybe you don't even realize it about yourself. They may have just observed you and, like how you act when you're angry and, the fact that you, furrow your brow or something like that. You may not realize it, so you're blind to it, but other people can see it. It's known to others. And when your partner shares that information, like, do you know the faces you make when you're angry? That information moves from the blind pane over to the open pane. Now, the unknown pane contains information that you don't know about yourself and no one else does either. So, for example, you can't make a list of this information because you don't know it. It's unknown. But you get this information over time, and as you get this information, it moves either directly over to the open or moves into the secret pane. For example, you don't know anything about ziplining. You don't know whether you'd like it or not until you try it. So it's unknown. Once you go ziplining, then you know it. So it might move into the secret pane. And if you share that information with other people, then that moves into the open pane. So as you disclose more and more information to others, the open pane becomes larger and the secret pane becomes smaller. Okay, these are some strategies for disclosure, and I'm not going to go through these in a lot of detail here, but they're in your slides so you can take a look at them. Okay, and that will be the end of part 2.